It's bad for your grades.
I'm gonna cut it out.
Oh, okay.
And this is why. And my name is Dorian Williams, and this is my speech on why exams shouldn't be used to label students. What thoughts come to mind when you think of the word exam? Is it anxiety? Is it doubt? Is it worry? The reason is it's hardly ever positive. These exams shouldn't be a way to categorize students since they only give a small view of what a student can do. They raise stress and anxiety levels and can kill the joy of overall learning. Growing up personally, I used to love reading all types of works and writing for fun, even things like writing small poems for my friends. When I got to school, I had to read passages and answer questions and prompts, which completely took the joy of my passion, and it got to the point where I didn't like doing it at all unless it was about a topic I've learned outside of school, and it was something I genuinely enjoy, like superheroes, anime, something like that. And growing up with ADHD, I'm sure you can imagine how much more difficult all this was. I would even know the material sometimes, but the test itself would give me such anxiety, I would second guess myself in everything. Today we'll talk about 3 things that will shed light on this issue and hopefully give you all motivation to help solve it. We'll talk about how exams don't accurately measure intelligence, how exams discourage creativity and critical thinking, and third, the better alternatives to exams. Let's get straight to it. The problem with using exams to label students is this. Let me picture this for you. Have you ever felt that a test score, just one number, somehow summed up everything you knew? That's because exams only show how good someone is at taking a test, not what they actually know or how they know how to apply that knowledge. Imagine 2 students who understand, something like Shakespeare. Macbeth. We've all had to read that or watch the movie at some point in school. One student thrives in time quizzes and picks the right answer, and the other needs more time to organize their thoughts but can also write a passionate essay on ambition. An exam will crown the first student smarter, even though the other student grasps the same concept. This isn't just hypothetical. Actually, according to a 2021 Washington Post article by Stratus, standardized tests often focus on rote memorization, regurgitating facts, rather than evaluating deeper understanding or creativity. A student's ability to bubble in the correct circle becomes more important than their ability to actually analyze, debate, or create. For students like me who struggle with ADHD or high test anxiety, that single snapshot feels more like a trap than a measure of true ability. In fact, the American Test Anxieties Association reports that 16 to 20% of students experience high test anxiety, which can lower scores dramatically regardless of how well they knew the material. What are the effects of this, you might ask? Students start to believe they're not smart simply because a time test didn't go well. That self-doubt seeps into other areas. Math becomes a wall, writing feels risky, and attending class can trigger avoidance. Low self-esteem, school attendance, and loss of passion for learning become the unintended consequence of our over-reliance on exams. Now here's where we see the problem play out. But let's also now examine why it exists in the first place. Schools and school districts are under immense pressure to produce quantifiable results. Funding decisions, public rankings, and accreditation often hinge on test scores. The National Center for Fair and Open Testing actually found in 2020 that schools lean heavily on exams as their primary metric for student performances because numbers are easy to report and compare. This data or nothing mindset pushes teachers into a teaching to the test, focusing on test-taking strategies rather than true comprehension. When an English class becomes all about identifying the main idea in passages, you lose the thrill of literary exploration. Few schools and policymakers are familiar with the wealth of assessment alternatives out there. We've always had exams, so why question them? Yet, as Terada highlights in 2023 Utopia article, project-based assessments and students' portfolios give a richer picture of student growth, but remain underutilized regardless. We stick with what's comfortable. Multiple choice essays and things like that because it's familiar, not because it's effective. Understanding the root cause clears the way for real solutions. Here are some things you can do to try and solve this problem and pave a better way forward. Imagine replacing a biology exam on ecosystems with a semester-long project where students build a miniature ecosystem in a model. We used to do things like that sometimes in elementary and things like that on up to middle school, but rarely in high school. Imagine they did that and present their findings and write a reflection on challenges they face. Suddenly, assessments isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing demonstration of learning. Projects, presentations, and class discussions let students show what they know in multiple ways, written, oral, or creative, and take away the pressure of performing and perfectly in one sitting. Now, listen. We don't need to overhaul the entire system overnight. Schools can pilot one alternative assessment per semester, perhaps a group project in history, a performance in music, or a portfolio of math problem solving. Teacher training programs should include modules on designing, grading, and giving feedback on these assessments. Professional learning communities can share best practices so teachers don't feel like they're inventing the wheel alone. And the reason why all this works is because the evidence is compelling. A 2022 study by the Buck Institute for Education showed that students in project-based classrooms not only perform better, but on state tests, but also are reported higher engagement and less stress. When students get to pay and play to their strengths, visual, verbal, hands-on, regardless of what it is, they learn more deeply and remember concepts longer. Alternative assessments level the playing field for students with ADHD, text anxiety, or even students with different cultural backgrounds, and gives every learner a chance to shine. But in conclusion, exams, as we know, don't truly measure intelligence. They crush creativity, penalize students with anxiety or learning differences, and stifle the natural joy of discovery. We trace the problem to systematic pressures for easy metrics and unexamined devotion to tradition. Then we explore solutions such as projects, portfolios, presentations that meet students where they are and celebrate growth over grades. How we measure learning shapes how students see themselves. If we keep valuing speed, memorization above all else, we risk losing the curiosity and the passion that makes education meaningful. But we can change this. Speak up if you feel trapped by exams. If you teach, try incorporating an alternative assessment this semester. If you believe in the power of learning, back policies that diversify how we judge success. And overall, remember this. One test score shouldn't define a student. Learning isn't about growth, passion, and discovery. It's not fear. I say together, we build a system that reflects that truth. Thank you. Now, is there any questions, comments, concerns at this time?
Sir, how did you get such a great beard?
That's irrelevant. Can we stay on topic, please?
Okay. What about that nice curly hair?
Nate. Assignment.
How has exams in school impacted your ability to progress, and how did you overcome that?
Well, to touch back on what I was talking about in the essay, how they impacted me. Like I said, during with ADHD, when it came to tests like the SATs or the Georgia milestones, I was never a studier, just because the stuff they introduced in school never really interested me, because I had to, like I said, when it came to writing, there was writing prompts on stuff I wasn't interested in, or stuff that just didn't pique my interest and get the creative, I guess for lack of words, the creative juices going. And so when it came to like standardized tests where it only they made us take classrooms or take classes where they taught us how to take the test itself. And when you think about it, like that doesn't really show how, it didn't really show how much I knew on the test, just how well I was at taking the test. And it just didn't pique my interest. So the way it affected me was it just didn't give me interest in learning. And I think, of course, there's, sometimes you gotta do things you don't want to do, but that by itself, it just threw me off when it came to learning and taking tests. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did that answer your question?
So basically, the tests have amplified your natural hormonic ability to produce hairs that equal to your beard.
No. I guess you could say that if for stress, stress helped make me age more. But on a serious note, did that answer your question?
I think it fairly answered my question, sir. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. This is my exam. Thank you so much.